Lollipop, lollipop. Hey, I could use some. Yeah, I want some lollipops. Lollipop.
And welcome to Linux and Whatnot. That was beautiful, Matt.
That was just weird.
Beautiful. I loved that. That was my favorite ever.
Yeah. Sure.
Ever.
Why not?
That's my musical thing right now. That's my thing.
Earworm in your head.
This is episode 6. Did we decide? Yeah, 6.
No, 7. 7, I think.
No, I think it's 6.
I'm sure it's 7. We're going to call it 6.7.
I love that we're not even to 10 episodes yet, and we have no idea what episode number this is. Doesn't even matter.
Are for chumps.
Doesn't even matter. So we're talking today with a bunch of people from different desktop environments, and that is totally rad. We got them all together and hoped that they would fight. They didn't fight so much, but it's great. So it's fantastic, and they were lovely people, and that's all. Yes. That's all coming up here. I have a tiny little side note story, Matt.
Okay, let's hear it.
As if you watch the video, Matt, you'll notice about 10 minutes before the end of the video, I start mousing up to the top of the screen where it pops down my little taskbar and shows my clock.
Oh yeah.
And I was starting to watch the time. And it wasn't because the guests were boring. They were being delightful.
Right. No,
and you,
awesome.
Totally fantastic. And we could have kept going for a while. I really needed to use the little boys' room wicked bad. About 10 minutes before the end of the show, I'm like, oh man, I was starting to sweat. I'm like, I don't know that I can make this. The morning caffeine is really kicking in, guys.
Most episodes I actually go through that. I just hide it really well. I do a little jig.
Well, I realized I'm sitting in here. I have this little room in my house where I do all my recording at, and I don't have any other things in here right this moment with a clock on it. Like it's just this computer I'm recording on at the moment. Like I left my tablet in the other room and everything, so there was no way for me to discreetly just glance down and be like, what time is it? Can I make it 10 minutes? So yeah, so people can watch me nervously fidget while I need to use the little boys' room near the end. Okay,
you carried it well. I never would have known until you needed to take care of business.
I tried really hard. Link for me. That's Patreon. You can go there. Matt, you have a link?
Linkage.
Oh, I like that link. That's a really good one. Again, for those of you who are somewhat new to Linux and Whatnot, no ads on Linux and Whatnot. No sponsors on Linux and Whatnot. None at all. So if you feel like supporting us, click on the links and tell people about us. That's good enough.
That's right.
That's all it takes. Just a little bit.
Click, share, and love. That's all we want.
Click, share, and love, baby. Mm-hmm. Love. All right. Should we get into this?
Let's do her.
I think we should. Sing us in, boy.
Hey.
My dear friend Matthew, we have gathered with us here today 3 cool people, all involved with desktop environments that are very distinctly different from each other, which is great because then it's like a Thunderdome cage match and we can all put them in together and just see which one survives. Or we could go around and see where they're different and where they're the same and then have an intelligent conversation. I'm not sure how this is going to work out yet, but let's find out.
Wow.
From the Unity side of things, we've got the one and only Alan Pope, community manager over at Canonical/Ubuntu/ I don't know. I'm sorry. My brain just kind of melted when I saw your devilishly handsome hair. That is phenomenal, by the way.
That is awesome.
It is big hair.
It is amazing.
I deliberately grow it long until it annoys my wife so much that she books me a hairdresser's appointment.
There is no way that should ever annoy your wife. That is handsome as hell. And he's also joined by Daniel Fore, who is very, very special in that he is the first person to be on 2 completely different episodes of Linux and Whatnot. That's a pretty friggin' big deal. He's the founder over at the Elementary Project, which has the Pantheon desktop environment. And of course, we have the one and only Thomas Pfeiffer, who does user interaction and stuff over at KDE on the Plasma desktop environment. Say hello to the entire world, Thomas.
Hey.
Well put. All right. Let's start with this from a really, really, really high level. I'm going to ask each of you guys the basic, very basic, high level, like 1 or 2 sentence version of what is the primary goal of your desktop environment? Just to get a baseline here. I'm going to start with Popey. I'm curious if there's actually any differences here. Popey, what is the basic idea? What is the basic goal of Unity? High level.
So I guess you could say it's design-driven, user-centric, and designed to get out of your way.
Okay, I'm going to cut out design-driven and user-centric because buzzwords fill my heart with rage. Now, designed to get out of your way, I get that.
Cool.
So okay, like but I mean, what's the goal? Like, why Unity? Why Unity?
So Ubuntu existed for a few years before Unity came along, and we had a bunch of flavors that used different desktops. So GNOME 2 was
beautiful.
what we launched with.
Yeah, that was pretty great.
We had flavors that had KDE, various versions of KDE over the years, and we had other flavors for XFCE and Ubuntu and so on. And I think I didn't work at Canonical at the time when Unity was started, but I get the vibe that we weren't getting a lot of traction with the desktops that we had in terms of OEM deals. Okay. So it was seen that we needed something which would be visually appealing, easy to use, and hence design-driven.
Okay, I get what you're saying by design-driven now. Something that you could control the visual aspects of to pitch to OEMs and partners and whatnot, right?
Right.
Is that about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Daniel, what's the point of Pantheon? And I know that's the most jerkish way of asking that question, but like, what's the goal?
I'd say the primary goal for Pantheon is to be a facilitator for great applications. So, and what I mean by that is that the desktop environment is a platform for developers to come in and build atop. So we like to do things like find out what all the application developers are doing and then just kind of bake that into the desktop environment in a transparent way so they don't have to keep re-implementing the same things. Okay. A good example of that is the new notification settings. We had a lot of applications that were baking in their own notification settings, and we said, hey, you know what? This makes sense for all apps. Let's do it in a centralized way so that developers don't have to think about that and users just get that feature for free.
In a nutshell, Pantheon is Borg? Just
sure.
kind of sucks up all cultures and kind of pulls it under one thing. I kind of get what you're saying, though. I totally get what you're saying. Thomas, is there a high level goal for KDE Plasma?
Yeah, sure. So our official tagline is getting stuff done. The unofficial one is getting shit done.
Can you say that on this show? You can. You actually can.
You totally can.
Yeah, it's totally okay.
And for the design, the tagline is simple by default, powerful when needed. So this is, I think, the big difference in goal from many other desktop environments. That while of course we want to be simple by default, as in not overwhelming people with things they don't need, Plasma always aimed to provide those who need that extra power, that can be in the form of configurability, that can be in the form of nifty little helpers that increase your productivity. The people who need that and want that not only from applications but also from parts of the desktop. So for those people,
very cool.
Plasma is made.
Gotcha.
That makes sense.
Totally makes sense. I'm gonna open this up to the general floor now at this point because there's one really distinct difference between KDE and then Unity and Pantheon. Unity and Pantheon were both developed for a specific distro first, right? Now, obviously, it's possible to get both. They're both free software. You can get them up and running on other distributions, yada yada. But they were developed for a one distro first. Pantheon for elementary, Unity for Ubuntu. KDE was developed kind of to be agnostic, right? To be kind of a free-floating distribution that should work in as many places as possible. What is the right way to do this? And I really mean that for all three of you guys. What is the right way to approach building this desktop environment? I mean, I think like especially for Popey, Ubuntu's gotten a lot of crap, right? I mean, you guys have gotten a lot of crap for for building a desktop environment for your distribution first and foremost. With, I mean, clearly it can be ported, but that's not the core focus. Is that a problem? But like maybe just like something that just ended up having to be that way, but isn't necessarily ideal? Or is that a good thing that is focused on one distribution?
I think it's a matter of perspective. If you're a user of something like Debian or Arch and you like the way the Unity desktop works and it's not available in your distro or there isn't a recent version, then it could be frustrating and you might think, well, they're clearly doing the wrong thing because I can't get it on my distro, right?
Okay.
But if you're an Ubuntu user, then you could be sure that our focus is getting that thing working on Ubuntu for you. In the same way that Daniel's focus, I would imagine, is mostly to get the applications working on his platform. They don't worry too much about their applications working on some other distro. It would be great if they do, and I'm sure some people have ported those things across to other distros. But I would rather that our users had an excellent experience, and maybe as a byproduct, other people had the availability to use those things because it's free software. Whether it's right or wrong, perspective. I mean, looking back, maybe it might have been better if we were available in lots of different distros, but then the development team that was working on Unity is tiny. Like the initial set of developers, probably about 10 people. So do we want them distracted by bug reports coming in because Unity doesn't start on Arch or because it doesn't work on Slackware or something? Or would we rather they focus their attention on making an excellent experience on Ubuntu?
So from your point of view, it's more of like a scalability thing. It's just we only have X number of resources and we focus on one platform instead of multiple platforms. Is that what I'm hearing?
To some degree, but also, like you say, it is free software. So if someone was, that keen that they wanted to run it on some other distro, they could. And I know, there have been versions of Unity in the Arch repos in the past. Mm-hmm. Maybe people just don't desire that. Maybe the people who are using Arch Linux are the type of expert user for whom they feel Unity isn't for them. And they prefer something like a tiling window manager or something with more configurability like KDE. So I can see why there is lack of motivation for people to port stuff. Plus the fact that it was moving fast back in those days. So you port it across to a different desktop, and then 5 minutes later we've changed something. And, that's hard. It's hard to motivate yourself to port something when the upstream is changing it all the time. And I can understand that.
So Daniel, do you have a same or different answer to that? Like what's your take on all that?
Yeah, for me, it's mostly a resources issue because, like Alan said, he's estimating about 10 people working on Unity. I mean, we've got 2 full desktop developers for the entirety of our company for everything. So, I think people underestimate how difficult it is to split focus. And when we can concentrate on building Pantheon for elementary OS, then we can reproduce the issues is the biggest issue, right? Like the most time goes into reproducing issues. So if we get somebody that's on Fedora or on Arch that wants to run Pantheon and they can reproduce the issues and help us track them down, we're always happy to merge that code in. And we've actually had a lot more wider Linux community contributions recently. So the next version of Pantheon, or actually this version of Pantheon, because we just did a bunch of stable tarball releases, this version of Pantheon should be very portable compared to the last version. But this is mostly community work, right? Because like Alan said, our personal resources are very small.
Now, I have one question for both you and Alan. So basically what you're saying is if there's someone out there in the Arch community or whatever it may be that wants to bring that desktop experience into their distribution, you would work with them with the understanding that they're taking responsibility for any of that porting and any of that extra work so that it's not put on you guys because you have limited, finite resources and a finite goal as to what you're looking for. Does that sound pretty accurate?
Right. And also so that any patches that come from another desktop another distro, they don't break the experience for Ubuntu. So it's all very well saying, I've got this set of 1,000-line patches that make Unity work on Slackware or whatever.
Sure.
But in the meantime, it breaks the experience, all the icons move, and that kind of headache is is not something we could sustain.
Yeah, so there needs to be some degree of separation just for sanity, it sounds like, I would think. So.
Right, and we've carried conditionals for like different versions of U-Power and stuff like that, right? Where we had API breaks between what's shipping in Arch and what's shipping in Debian-based distros.
Interesting. Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, let's toss this over to the Pfeiffer man. Pfeiffer man, my guess is you have a slightly different take on this.
Yes. Well, for KDE, and since we started with no connection to any specific distribution, it's just the default for us to work on as many distributions as possible. But of course, that also does make things more complicated and more difficult. We see that pretty clearly right now with Neon, because Neon isn't just the distribution, the only distribution we focus on, but we of course always first make things available on Neon, because there's also the Neon Developer Unstable Edition, which just builds right for master. And since we work directly with the whole distribution team, it's comparatively easy to get things working well there. But this is always just the start, and from the moment on where it works well with Neon, we make sure that it works well with any distribution that ships Plasma. But that we can clearly see that this is where things often get more complicated, because, for example, as Daniel already said, that different distributions have different versions of underlying libraries or different things that, for example, we cannot do any hard depends on any systemd components, because distributions like Slackware will always say, well, we won't ever have systemd, but we still want Plasma, so please make it work. And this is, of course, this does cost additional resources, and we make sure that the end user experience is not any worse because of it. But we at some points we do say that, well, if you want things to be perfect and to use every feature, then you have to use systemd. Plasma will work without, and we will always make sure that it will work and nothing will break badly. But at some points we want to use some specific things like login, for example, for some advanced features, and then we just have to say, well, if you're not using systemd, then or actually if you're not using login, because you can do login without systemd, but if you don't have login, then some features just won't be available.
Sure. That seems reasonable. Well, and one thing I wanted to ask you directly was, by supporting so many distributions, do you sometimes, at least most of your team, do you guys feel like sometimes it just would be easier to just focus exclusively on Neon and then just release your work and let someone else deal with it? I mean, like, you obviously have finite resources. Do you ever feel like you guys are diversified too far, too thin, to the point where bug reports are coming in from obscure distributions and you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to deal with this? Does it ever feel overwhelming? Do you ever wish you could just center in on a single distro? Wish list, obviously,
Yeah, well, since I'm not a developer, I don't have to deal with the bug report.
But have you sensed that from other folks that you work with?
Yeah, but I'm sure that some of the developers sometimes feel that way.
Sure.
But it's really our commitment to work on as many distributions as possible, and all the developers keep that promise. But cool. I'm pretty sure that they at some points do feel like, oh, it would be so easy if we just.
And my heart breaks for them, because I know that's got to be tough. Okay.
It's heartbreaking. It's truly heartbreaking. It really is. So, what's the right way to go here? I mean, realistically, is there a right way to go? I mean, because there's criticism thrown around quite a lot. I can see it's mostly thrown over at Canonical because they're Canonical and you throw criticism at them. But so Canonical and the elementary team aren't the only ones that create a desktop environment or an application or a user experience that's just for their individual platform. They're not alone in that regard. They're just the two that are here today, and they're high profile in the Linux world. Is that should the end goal to be more like KDE in the end, if possible, if all things are equal and if unicorns can fly and all those other good things, should we try and make sure that we keep all those desktop environments running across distros, or is it totally okay? I guess is what I'm wondering. Like I have a couple of opinions on it, but honestly, I'm not 100% certain. I'm kind of fancy myself. Alan,
I think what you got to remember is that none of these desktops were created in a vacuum, and they weren't all standing on the starting blocks on the same day. So they weren't all created at the same time with the same environment going on and the same, catalysts. For example, KDE had very specific catalysts to make their project, and Daniel had specific reasons for making his. And the time was, what it was. The environment was what it was when those things were created. So when Unity was created, there were specific criteria that we had for making that making that desktop. And so I don't think it can be compared directly whether it was right or wrong to do it a particular way.
No, not whether it's right, whether it was right or wrong, but what's the utopian ideal? Where should we be? Sometimes I think we get caught up in how things are and kind of maybe how to make things a little bit better. But what's the ideal? We're free software folks, man. We're idealists and we're crazy about it. What's the ideal?
If we had like a bottomless pit of developers and QA people and testers and all that kind of stuff, it would be great if our software ran everywhere. But even companies that have bottomless pits of money and developers and QA people, like Google, for example, still create a product which depends on one specific platform.
Right.
All the bits and pieces that go to make up Android are built for Android. They're not built for anyone else's desktop. They're not built for any other system. They're built for Android and Android alone. And nobody calls them out on that. It's all very well calling us out on the fact that we created Unity and it works best on Ubuntu, but other people do that as well. I'm not saying that's
they totally do.
That's a fair point. That's a really important
point. They totally
do. Very successful and have large sums of money and still continue to do it the way they do it.
All right, so let's take a step back on this for a moment, because I think this is kind of interesting. This discussion comes up a lot, and people never delve deep enough into it to actually get to a place of resolution. We just yell at Canonical is basically what we end up doing.
We take an easy way out.
Yeah, exactly, right? Okay, so let's for a second, and Daniel, you can chime in on this, but I'm going to leave Pantheon out of this particular comparison here. So let's talk KDE and KDE Plasma and Unity for a second, all right? Alan, what year did Unity first hit the scenes? Not necessarily the netbook edition, but the first time it was really on the desktop with kind of like a 1.0-ish release.
So that was October 2010, I think.
So
I think that was the first release where it was the default.
That sounds about right. Yeah. Thomas, when did KDE Fore come out? What year was that? Do you remember? It was about that time, wasn't it? 2009, 2010.
I think 2008.
2008. Okay, so about a year and a half, 2 years prior to Unity's launch. Okay.
Although that was Plasma 4.0, which was not intended to be released in general, but was just we all know the story.
Yeah. But to be fair, I don't know that Unity, when it was first released, really was ready to be released in general either. So
actually that's a fair point. We've said since then we've learned a lesson that perhaps it's not a good idea to crowbar slightly unfinished things as the default desktop on a distro that's
I would kind of agree with that. So okay. Now, from the Unity side of things, sponsored by a company, again, a limited team of developers because of financial constraints around it, but sponsored and put onto a single platform. KDE Fore, Thomas, would it be fair to say that it's predominantly, kind of a community-driven effort and not necessarily a company-driven effort around KDE Plasma?
Yeah, it is. I mean, at the moment, many Plasma developers are employed by Blue Systems, but still Blue Systems doesn't drive plasma development. It's still, every decision is still a community decision. So it's still a community-driven project.
Thomas, from your point of view, right now, judging for that both Unity and KDE Plasma in their current incarnations have had, at least say 5-6 plus years. Both of them have had a good half decade or more of maturing, of baking, of whatnot time. Would you say that KDE Plasma, which runs across multiple distros, is significantly buggier or provides a worse experience than Unity?
I don't think so. I mean, first of all, Plasma 5 was pretty much a rewrite, so the maturing is only since 2014, actually.
Oh, for Plasma 5. I guess I was kind of thinking with 4 just because 4 was out there for a ways, it had been out there for a while. But let's say 4. So let's say the latest and greatest version of Plasma 4. Would you consider that one to be buggier, less polished than the current incarnation of Unity?
No, I would not. Plasma 4.11, there went a lot of stabilization effort into it. So at the end we were at the point where it was really quite stable. And
fair.
Well, then of course the new version came out, which still needs maturing and everything. But those who stuck with 4.11 for until it really ran out of and until it wasn't supported anymore, were quite happy.
Right. Okay. Back to Popey. I saw you smiling with that evil little grin. That you saw exactly where I was going with all of that. Would Alan, the Pope Meister, and this comes down to the fundamental concept itself, would you say that KDE is significantly buggier in the latest Plasma 4 release than Unity?
So I have no way of knowing because I don't run KDE.
What?
Anything.
What?
No.
Not even sometimes, man?
So yes, I have it in the last week. I've run it in KVM because I'm testing a few things on Kubuntu. But so the last time I ran KDE was we had a Ubuntu Developer Summit in Mountain View in California, and I looked over the shoulder of a KDE user, and I said, "That looks amazing." And he said, "Yeah, it is. It's Kubuntu. It's KDE. You should try it." So I said, "Okay, I'll try it for 6 months." And so I wiped. At the time, I think I had a Toshiba laptop, and I nuked what was on my laptop, and I was like, nuke and pave, clean install of KDE. And personally, I just couldn't get on with it. I spent a couple of months, and I gave up. Much like your command line effort.
Hey,
Brian,
it happens to the best of us, man.
There's everyone has their their way of working, their preferences, their favorites, and so on. And I just couldn't get into it, and so I gave up, which was very slack of me, not being able to sustain 6 months of using
Would you say that was years ago though? Now, but would you say that experience, that when you stopped using it, was it because of workflow, usability, bugs? What was it that caused you to stop and jump back over to the Unity or wherever you went back to side of things?
I think I just got frustrated. I couldn't find things, and things behaved weirdly. I've been using Linux distros for years and years, and mostly I've been on XFCE or GNOME 2, and it just became frustrating for me. And I don't think there's any reason why anyone should have to force themselves to use something they don't like. In the same way that I wouldn't expect a KDE person to force them to use Unity, and force them to like it. If you don't like Unity, that's fine. It's okay to not like things. It's not a problem. And so there are people.
I make my whole living off of not liking some things, so I totally get that.
Yeah. If it pays the bills, then that's
right.
That's extra nice. All right, I'm gonna move this over to Daniel for a second. Daniel, with you kind of see where I'm going with all this, right? I mean, it's when I look around and I see various desktop environments. And there are certain desktop environments that I am a big fan of, yours being one of them. I think there's a lot of desktop environments that do a phenomenal job. But when I look around and I see KDE, I see, GNOME in the shell, I see Mate, and I see all these desktop environments, and some of them are great and really well polished. And some of them are less great and less well polished, to put it as diplomatically as I can. I don't know that I see a clear dividing line between ones that are focused on a system and ones that are not focused on a system. Do you see that line? I mean, when you look at, let's say, have you used Unity in somewhat of a current incarnation and or KDE Plasma?
I've used Unity within the last couple of years lightly and gave up real fast. I haven't used KDE since, maybe 8 to 10 years.
Holy moly.
I don't think I could give them any kind of fair.
I think a challenge is in mind. It would be cool if everyone could try each other's desktops for a day, just to kind of, especially the latest incarnations with all the changes. KDE.
Right, I got to ask Pfeiffer. In the last, let's say, 2 years, what desktop environments have you used other than Plasma?
Well, I've actually used I've only Plasma, but I every once in a while I just boot up different desktops, mostly just to see how they do things, so that
that's cool.
Well, in some cases just to look for
steal their good ideas,
but in most cases just to make sure that we don't separate too much, so that people can still switch between different desktops without having to relearn everything.
Right.
And some things just make sense to be similar in some ways, and that's why I always keep a couple of ISOs on my hard disk, and then just boot them up, different ones, just to see how others do specific things. But in those cases, I don't really use the other desktops, so it's mostly just trying some things out and see how they work there.
I think Matt was totally right. We need to go around, get people, make key reps from all the major desktop environments and force them all to use a different one. We just need to shift one to the right and just see what sort of chaos ensues.
Just for one work day is all I ask. I mean, because I think that would really get people plugged into. Not only might it have folks rethink some of the stuff they're currently doing, but I think it's just healthy, And then that way, if you can't deal with it, that's fine. It's only a day. Move on. No big deal.
Let me ask this of Matt. Matt,
okay.
Let's ignore that we have guests for a minute. Let's be incredibly rude about this, and let's just have a conversation for a second.
Okay.
Now you've used all of these desktop environments,
I
right?
have, yes.
Because you're like me, and you kind of are a junkie about it. You just randomly install them all. So, do you see a quality difference between the ones focused on individual platforms and the ones that are not?
Honestly, yes and no. I would say rather than quality, I'd say more integration. I think some desktop environments have higher integration than others. Elementary is a great example of integration. Unity is a great example of integration. And yes, honestly, KDE is also an example of integration with KDE applications. There's a lot of tight-knit integration going on there. And then there's different visions for each. So
Fair.
Yeah. Now, you can even ask me my preference, and I'll tell you, but that's fine.
What's your preference?
Right now, and I never in a million years thought I'd say this, right now I've been using GNOME 3, and I'm not hating it as much as I was 2 weeks ago.
It's not terrible, right?
No, it's growing on me, and I'm kind of an XFCE Mate type guy.
Yeah, you're old school.
Yeah.
You're old school.
Yeah, this is kind of growing on me. It's kind of cool.
All right,
but I want to try them all.
I kind of want to follow this up. All right, totally goofy question, Alan. You can't use Unity anymore. There's a law. What do you run?
I would use.
It's got something here.
The Ubuntu Mate, of course.
Right on.
You go the Mate route, however we want to pronounce that. Mate.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I run it on that laptop, so.
So you'd go old school. So basically, old school Ubuntu. What Ubuntu was pre-Unity then. I mean, in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, I think so. It's tricky. I mean, this whole conversation about do you like this or that? I mean, we're 40 minutes in and we haven't had a car analogy. So
I've been trying really hard to avoid cars.
I drive or have driven for the last 10 years a beaten up old Volvo. So if you ask me my opinion of driving BMWs or Mercedes, I wouldn't be able to tell you because I just haven't used one for a long time. I might have an opinion about them, and I might have an opinion about the people who drive them, but I am the worst person to ask for that opinion.
I'm so glad we brought you on for that.
That's awesome.
There's yes. I'm just out of curiosity, Daniel. If let's say for elementary, right? Let's not even say you personally. If you were like, okay, we just don't have the resources to continue Pantheon development. I wish we did, but we just don't. We got a hardcore focus. What's the desktop environment that you would pick for elementary if Pantheon didn't exist?
I'd have to go with GNOME.
Like current GNOME or old school GNOME?
Like current.
Yeah. Now, would you go current GNOME with the default GNOME shell, or would you go like highly modified 8,000 different extensions and go crazy with it?
Probably extensions, and I think that's something that's really interesting about GNOME in particular is how much they've embraced extensions. And you see like distros spun up now, like this new one, Apricity, and it's basically just GNOME extensions, right? It's like a whole distro of extensions.
It's kind of delightful. What about you, Thomas? I mean, you've been a KDE dude for a long time. What if you couldn't anymore? What if everything with the letter K in it was outlawed? What do you do, man?
I would probably go for GNOME 3 as well. Mostly because they try new things and really they've tried many radical new things with GNOME 3, and it took people quite a while to adapt to it, or some just never did, which is fine.
Yeah.
But whenever I run GNOME for some time, I see nice ideas in there, and yeah, I'd go for that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Let's move to the future. Let's talk about the future a little bit, gentlemen. You guys got 3 very distinctly different desktop environments, kind of going in different ways, right? Where is this going? I mean, on the Unity side of things, oh man, I was trying to switch over here because I was hoping you were picking your nose, Alan. I tried to switch the camera to you as fast as I could, and I missed it. I'm sorry to our viewers. I failed you on this one. So Unity kind of has this, at least from the public's perspective, this defined vision of this convergence, right? So you got this single user interface on mobile, tablets, desktop, etc.
Right.
Is that kind of the end all be all future that you guys see, or is it just something you're trying? Is it just the way Canonical's going about it, the Canonical's goals, or is this the broader computing world future from your point of view?
So Mark Shuttleworth talked about on his blog convergence quite a few years ago, and every so often Mark will set fairly ambitious and aggressive goals, like we'll have it in the distro by this release, or it will be the default by that release. And I think he's reined back from some of that more recently.
It's a bummer. I always like those really grand, over the top goals. Those are fantastic.
Yeah, I think, and so that that's been around for a while. So this is not like let's try this thing out for a year and see if it works. Unity 8 has been developed alongside the maintenance of Unity 7, which is the desktop that's currently shipping in Ubuntu. So it's currently in progress. It's what ships on all the phones and the tablets. It will be, in theory, in 16.10. So you'll be able to log out from your Ubuntu desktop and log back in under Unity 8 and have a play with it. And it won't be finished, but it's to a point where people could use it.
Yeah.
And then we can fix the bugs, find out usability problems, and work on those for the next release and the next release and so on. So it's early days. I mean, I think we're doing it very differently than we did with Unity 7, given that we're not lumping this on people with performance issues and memory issues.
Performance issues? What are you talking about? Ubuntu Unity's always been super, super snappy. I don't mean to leave it on that snark. I really didn't. I want to toggle it over to Pfeiffer real quick. All right, from the KDE side of things, from the KDE perspective, what is the future? I mean, you guys, just like with Unity, have been talking about convergency-related stuff for years now. I mean, I think I remember Saigo talking about convergency stuff, I don't know, like a decade ago, right? So what is the future of KDE and of KDE Plasma specifically on the desktop?
Yeah, as you said, convergence is really still a big goal. Of course, we have the problem that we don't have a mobile operating system yet. We're working on one. I mean, well, yeah, it is available, but not yet in a consumer-ready state, and not being shipped on any devices. When we had tried that with Plasma Active, but yeah, that pretty much turned out to be too big of an undertaking for a too small group, and yeah, we had to learn the hard way that you need way more resources to actually make a mobile operating system work. Yeah, now we do have the chance, but it still will take a while until it becomes consumer ready. But still, yeah, convergence is a big topic also for us, which in our case is mostly visible in the Kirigami framework.
Yeah.
Which can be used for convergent applications. But then, of course, you need to run them on an operating system. But for example, the Ubuntu Touch in Unity will also be an important platform for Kirigami-based applications. But from Plasma side, it's a bit of a more difficult story because we don't have that mobile operating system ready yet, but still want to focus on that. And yeah, the other area of focus is on productivity. So yeah, now that we've set our goal to really make people productive when using Plasma, we will put more effort into that, and really the goal is to, for every feature that is proposed, to really look at, will this make people productive or more productive, yes or no? If not, then it won't be implemented.
I get that. So where do you see it being, so a couple of years down the line? I mean, clearly on the canonical Unity side of things, convergence is kind of like the vision. That's kind of where they seem to be headed. I don't mean to put words into Popey's mouth, but that's really the visionary focus. Do you have something like that on the Plasma side where you can say, okay, several years down the line, this is where we're going? We will get there by the end of the decade. One of those big sort of things. Is it a convergency thing? Is it a meeting a certain level of productivity thing? Is it just to keep going down the same road and iteratively improving on what you've got? What are you doing? What's the thing?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. I think well, we have reached our goal. If people who want to really use their computers mostly productively will choose Plasma as their preferred desktop environment to do that.
All right, fair. Daniel, my guess is you're a little different than the other two on this answer a little bit. Same basic question. What's the vision? What's the, I hate to use the phrase 5-year plan, but where are you going? What's the thing that sounds amazing for Pantheon?
I think we'd love to get to mobile, but I think that we have a lot of things that we need to do first to make the desktop environment more useful that would lend to a mobile experience. We could make Pantheon right now responsive, right, and figure out a way to put it onto a demo phone and ship a phone platform that does like nothing useful, right? So okay. What my immediate focus is for the next cycle is to do two things that I think go really hand in hand, and is add online accounts integration features, which I think is extremely important to get to tablet and mobile, especially if you expect that your users might have more than one machine. So we need things like better cloud drive integration in the file manager and in the applications themselves to be able to sync between multiple devices, geolocation and contacts and things like integration, but we need to balance that with privacy and security features. So we want to have more of the kind of agents, I guess is the kind of name for them, where you have applications that request permission to use APIs and then make sure they're denied access to those APIs when the user specifies. So I don't want this application to be able to access my location or my contacts, things like that, but make platform APIs available to developers.
Okay, but realistically, your focus is on, on the desktop as a platform, the desktop platform for at least the foreseeable bit of future.
Yeah, and we have some ideas about how we can get to mobile, but there's a lot of effort that we have to pour into desktops first, and the next kind of stage is convertible laptops, and then tablets, and then mobiles, kind of like a progression. Like, how do we make these devices useful for all the sensors and form factors that they have, like in a progression?
Okay.
Fair.
Yeah.
In the last couple of minutes of us all talking together here, we've got Unity, we've got Elementary, and we've got Plasma. Are there any things that you guys would like to ask of each other? I mean, I'm assuming the three of you have never sat on a panel together before. At least not certainly not on this topic. Is there anything that you would like to ask of each other at all, with the understanding that I don't want to say the gloves are off, but you can ask whatever you like. Popey, you've got the roguishly good looks here. It seems like you could have an interesting question for the other boys, but you do not have to. Same with the other ones. Fair open game.
So I recently had the pleasure to share beer with Daniel in Heidelberg, and we had interesting discussions while we were there. I think everything I would want to ask Daniel, I asked him over again.
Right on.
And not recorded on a camera.
It's all off the record, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, kind of.
Fair enough. Why is it all the very interesting conversations happen off the record, Matt?
Need more hat cam,
Right? How is that so hard? That actually would be a pretty phenomenal idea, because I've had some great conversations at some of these random free software get-togethers. We should all wear body cams like a lot of the police have to, where we just record the whole thing, and then we get to see what people actually think all the time.
You basically just like cough out, oh, by the way, I'm recording you real quick, and then have the conversation. So you're all legit, right?
Nah, we don't need to worry about privacy laws. That's redonkulous.
Yeah.
How about you, Thomas? If you could ask one question of Unity or Pantheon, what would it be? Or do you even have a question? Are you just too stunned by Alan Pope's roguish good looks?
Well, there's one question I'd have for both. Is where do you see freedesktop.org going as a platform for doing cross-desktop things?
That's a great question.
That is. I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah. Either of you guys have any ideas?
I would like us to get more involved, because I feel like that we can't complain about it because we haven't tried that hard to get involved. So I think that for the foreseeable future, we need to make more effort to reach out and get on the mailing list and participate more. We actually just got Pantheon added to the free desktop spec, so I'm pretty excited about that.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
But that's like as far as our involvement has gone so far, right? Like we got to really push and go, Nice. What can we pitch in and talk to people? There's actually one really interesting thing that we've been talking about that I would like to pitch as a free desktop is a URL scheme for settings, because it's useful for applications to be able to call up setting panes. So if you could have a URL scheme like settings network that applications could use cross-desktop to pull up the correct settings pane and the correct settings panel, I think that'd be really useful for all of us.
From an end-user point of view, that's kind of awesome. Cool.
That would be cool. Popey, what do you think about Pfeiffer's question?
I kind of have to agree with Daniel, really. I think it's one of those things that we've kept at arm's length for a while, and we should fix that a little bit.
There's always things like that, right?
Sure.
Yeah. All right.
And I also think we need to be careful of pushing our own agenda on bodies like Free Desktop, because it creates friction between different groups. If we're pushing something which is technology that services a need we have, and there are objections from other desktops, then that can cause friction between us. And then if that doesn't get resolved, then everyone throws their hands up and ignores the spec and creates their own standard, just like XKCD says. So it's a tricky problem to solve, but I think we can work more closely.
All right, few minutes left. I have one final little thing. Unity and Pantheon, both attractive, both used by a lot of people and loved by a lot of people. Not the most configurable desktops in the world, right? I think that's a fair statement to make.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Good looking, powerful, not highly configurable. KDE, on the other hand, is configurable to a redonkulous degree, right?
That's true.
You can kind of make it look like just about whatever you want. Now, if you can have a desktop that you can make look like and act like almost whatever you want, wouldn't you think that would be better? I'm just going to put that out there to Pfeiffer first. What do you view on that? What should be the end goal? Should it be massive customizability or an intentionally polished out of the box experience? If you had to choose one, which is the right way? Unity and Pantheon have made their choice clear. Like they went for the out of the box user experience, right? Over the customizability. KDE seems to have gone the other way, but is there a right decision there?
I don't think there's a globally right decision, because there are different user groups with different needs. And there are many users who don't want to configure the system. They just want to use it, and it should work well, and they're happy with that. But we can see that any time when we think that some option is just not useful, and who would ever change that? And so we propose to remove it, and then you can bet that there will be dozens, at least, maybe more, of people who very loudly complain, how could you do that? That was so important to my workflow, and you can't take that away from me. So there are people who really need configurability, and it's of course always a trade-off, because we try to be to not throw configuration options at people, overwhelming them. So we just always try to keep, as I said, simple by default, powerful when needed. So things should be fairly simple by default and should not need configuration to work well. But you can't get a high-level configuration without some trade-off. So configuration UI, which offers lots of options, will always be more complex than one which offers only very few options. So there will always be that trade-off, and there will always be people who just want and need the configurability, and there will always be people who don't need it. So that's why I think it's good that there are different desktop environments with different levels of complexity and configurability, so that people with different needs each have their own favorite and the desktop environment that works best for them.
You guys are both, all three of you are both delightful and disappointing. On the one hand, you guys all showed up and come from three very different camps and are not only nice and congenial, but eager to understand each other's differences and just generally pleasant about it. On the other hand, you guys were all generally delightful and pleasant with each other and really nice and reasonable, which does not help my ratings. One of you guys was supposed to hop on here and be all like, F Unity or something. No, but you guys are awesome. This is really cool.
Guys.
No. Well, it's one of the things I've noticed is the people doing the hardcore work on the individual distributions, on the individual desktop environments. Everyone all seems to, with one or two exceptions, get along really well together and like be eager and interested to work together. And it's the people generally uninvolved that seem to get really pissy about one desktop or one distro over another. I just think it's amazing that we've got 3 people on here who have been intimately involved with these for quite a few years now, and you're all just sitting there going, yeah, I kind of understand why other people would view it this way and not the way we do it, and that makes a lot of sense to me, and I just think that's just kind of delightful, but would not do very well on a cable news network chat show. Gentlemen, thank you very much for hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you guys.
You guys all do excellent work. Even people that work on Unity. But your hair is fantastic, so it's all good. Everybody, go forth, keep doing amazing things, and we'll talk to you guys at a later time.
Thanks, guys.
Brian.
Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Matt.
You bet.
Wait.
We forgot
the outro theme song.
Uh-oh.
Did any of you... so if you've been watching the show, we sing the intro song and the outgoing theme song, and we make it up on the spot. And we're giving our guests now the opportunity to sing the song that takes us out of the show.
Whoever wants to step forward. Yeah.
One of you gets to sing the song. You can sing whatever you want, just a couple seconds long. I'm going to count to 3, and then I'm going to pick somebody. And you have to sing it. You have to, contractually. I'm pretty sure. It's signed in blood at this point. So if one of you wants it, jump out before I say 3. Otherwise, I'm picking one. And you guys probably going to figure out who I'm going to pick. 1, 2. Oh, my gosh, I'm going to say 3. I know you're shaking your head, Popey, because you know it's going to be you. Someone wants to say Popey. He's going to sing a song. 3. Popey, sing us out of this episode of Lunduke and Whatnot.
No. I might look like Elvis, but I certainly don't sound like him.
Okay, so no jingles. Okay.
All right, that's fair. This episode ends on no.